This session is on AI, and in summary, we're looking at the solutions that cities and creative sectors can develop together to ensure AI strengthens creativity, broadens access, and enhances urban life. Now, typically when we talk about AI, we're beginning to assign human-like qualities to the tools. We talk about them. We look at a chat bot interface, and we use phrases, we use pronouns like I, and when it talks back to you, it says I, or we, or they. And when we use voice interfaces, we can choose what gender the voice speaks back to us in, and what accent, and what language. And if we peer behind the curtain, these incredible statistical machines are crunching billions of parameters to create fantastical and revolutionary tools. And it's easy to get swept away with the mind-boggling bigness of everything and the enormous numbers attached. 30% of the US stock market consists of companies that are either directly or adjacent to AI technology. ChatGPT, which has now become a verb rather than a noun, only launched in November 2022. It had 100 million users in 2 months and now has 700 million active users. And that's not including all the other tools like Gemini and Anthropic's Claude that are now in our public consciousness. In fact, the pace of change is so staggering, it's hard to keep track. I think everyone's struggling with it. Even just 2 days ago, OpenAI launched Sora, their video generation tool, which moves forward in leaps and bounds the quality of video that can be produced. Now anyone can produce incredibly high quality 10-second videos and publish them through a TikTok-like tool, which is now the 3rd most popular app on the Apple App Store. And it's easy to be dazzled by these numbers and intimidated by the blank screen of a ChatGPT interface. The aim of this session is to move beyond the hype and the existential either excitement or fear. And look at the practical examples and approaches. And we've got 3 great speakers from the UK using different lenses: the lens of community, the lens of culture, and the lens of the activity in the screen industries to explore the subject. But first, this. Dramatic pause.
What I would like to do is give a very quick history lesson in some ways of AI, because as Sam said, sometimes people think that AI started in November 2022 when ChatGPT launched. But it's been going for quite some time. And today we'll talk a bit about the before and the after as a very quick introduction before we get into the panel. So where did AI come from? Well, arguably, and I like to think it was invented a long time ago. And I have been looking at the works of a wonderful man called Ismail al-Jazari, who was born in 1136 in Upper Mesopotamia. And the work he did was the foundation of mechanics, of robotics. So arguably, you could say that the birthplace of AI was here in Turkey. So you can take that one, I would say. Interestingly, one of the final pieces of work he did was a band. And some academics say that the mechanical band that he created allowed you to change the song, the notation for the 3 different performers. Which again, if we look now at systems like 11 Labs and Suno and various different music generation systems, you could argue go back to that time. But if we move forward, from 1136 and that far ago, we can move forward to other key foundation points, I think, in creativity, because the interesting thing about AI, I find, is that the first indication of some form of intelligence, which is a loaded word, is judged by the creativity that it generates. And one of the first mechanical pieces that I got the privilege to see the other day was made in 1895 by a British inventor, I suppose, called John Clark. Those of you who are British may know that that is related to the Clark's shoes family. He was a strange cousin that sort of lived on the side, and he invented a machine called the automatic, called Eureka, which automatically generated Latin verse at that time. And it is an incredible machine to see. It's full of cogs and everything. So that was 1895, and then we fast forward more recently, and a short story that has fascinated me is by Roald Dahl, the children's writer, adult writer, and also sci-fi writer, I like to think. And Roald Dahl wrote a short story called The Great Automatic Grammatizator. And this short story, in this short story, the main protagonists build a machine that can read and ingest and learn from books, novels. And having ingested and understood those novels, it can then generate new literature, new novels. And the short story is an exploration morally of whether that's a good thing. It's told from the perspective of an author who is looking to sign a deal with this new technology company to see if that author will allow that company to use its intellectual property and creative work to generate new versions generatively of that work. So that was 1954, and then you can see even last week the deal that Anthropic, who run the AI system Claude, did with a number of writers and publishers. There is a direct parallel. It's almost like he was foretelling the future at that point in 1954. So that was then. Today, there are some interesting pieces, and I think when we start to look at the hurdles that AI is being given and what we think is intelligent, what we think is creative, I would say it started with the first version of what was then GPT by OpenAI, and the first question that was asked was, can it write a poem? Now, it's a bit of a false question because, as you probably know, poems are very open to interpretation. We could have a series of words and structure them in such a way that they may rhyme or have some rhythm, and it's up to us as the audience to interpret them. So it wasn't really a fair comparison. But then the challenges started to get slightly more challenging. Can it write a song? And as I mentioned, Suno was probably one of the first well-known technologies where you type your friend's name, a bit of character about your friend, and the fact they're having a birthday, and it will output a birthday song for you. Cheesy, but it outputs a song. But can it write a symphony? And I saw a version of this last week where, as a technology that allows someone who understands music and understands the composition of music to bring in a choir or bring in trumpets or the strings or wind instruments, all of these are available now and sound incredibly realistic. The big one is always, can it create an artwork? And often it is down to the individual users of what is art. You know, what do we like or what do we not like? Can it design a building very appropriately? And here, I did try that over the weekend researching for this talk, and I asked it to generate an architectural diagram for a particular building of a particular style, and it cannot. But I almost feel I need a t-shirt that just says "not yet" on it, because every time we see something where we say, yeah, but it can't quite work like that, can it? Within a few weeks or months, there is some new company that is looking at that particular angle. Can it create a video? Well, clearly, to a certain degree, I've just shown you that it can. I should say that that video, intro video, took me about 2 hours while I was watching a TV show at the weekend. So the speed at which we are now able to create a level of output is incredible. Now, being very critical, that video was not high quality. That was a short, sharp thing to amuse you and as an introduction to my piece. But the work we are doing with filmmakers, with animators, with musicians, with artists, with creators, who are using these to evolve what they have in their minds and the visions that they have, the outputs are astonishingly good. One of the areas that's interesting to me is, can it create character? We need to be very careful on this one. Sam alluded to it with ChatGPT, and I have friends who speak to ChatGPT as if it is their friend, their lover, their therapist. And each one of those friends, lovers, therapists influences our own behavior. That is a societal responsibility that the technology companies do not accept, and we need to be very conscious of it. And then, can it understand? Understand, and as someone who studied philosophy, I'd put a lot of importance on the word understand. Technically speaking, probably yes. Philosophically speaking, big question mark. But again, things are moving forward, and is it getting there? Can it pass the Turing test is often used as a sort of technical reason of understanding. Can it feel like we are having a conversation with a human being? I believe we passed that a long time ago, and probably back to early chatbots that were in the 70s and 80s, like Eliza and coming out of academics, because the believability factor is actually creative, it's not technological. A good magician gets us to believe their magic trick through psychology as much as anything else. And of course, while we are looking very much at the positive side, because part of what we like to do, and we focus today, is around what can we do as this audience to harness this wave of innovation that's coming through, and that's coming through AI. But acknowledging that there are significant constraints and guardrails and ethics that sit around this. Can it influence selection? Absolutely yes. And that's another one we need to be very mindful of. So I hope that gives a sort of very brief introduction of where we are with this code, this software system that has been created and called AI. I do think, as we are looking at charismatic AI, as we look at the next generation of stories, entertainment, cartoons, movies, books that may be created using these systems, ironically, we look back to the past more than I ever thought we would. We get inspiration from theatre, from immersive theatre, from buildings, from people, because a lot of those problems have already been solved around how to do dynamic, personalized, or interactive storytelling. So this is where we get excited, and hopefully that will come through in the panel today. So Sam, can it copy us, maybe? We're looking at characters like this in our new movies that are pretty realistic.
Just call me if you see him, okay?
Fine. Just be careful, okay?
So that sort of level of fidelity is where we're at now. So what we want is for this technology to assist us to make something new and push the boundaries of what we can do creatively. This could be place setting. We've created worlds with digital twins, which aren't just the twins of an architectural diagram, but are playable. You as a player can go and immerse yourself in them and build games around the structures that are being built digitally. So hopefully that's a quick introduction. I'd like to bring Sam and the other panelists on stage. Thank you very much. Should we sit according to...
Why don't you grab a seat down there? I'd like to welcome Jocelyn Burnham and Gillian Easson onto the stage. That was a great intro. Hopefully that gave a little taste of what's possible and where we're coming from. I'd like to ask Gillian and Jocelyn to introduce themselves and maybe talk about some work that they've done using AI. Gillian, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much to everybody for enabling this to happen. My name's Gillian Easson and I am from Creative Dundee. Dundee, anybody been to Dundee? Dundee is based on the northeast coast of Scotland, about 1 hour from Edinburgh. And the organisation that I founded and now run, Creative Dundee, is a networked organisation. So we believe that creative communities are essential catalysts for positive good and citywide growth. And if we create the spaces and have the capacity and the resources to help people imagine the future, then that's a really powerful thing for cities and our places to do. So increasingly, we run events, yes, we have a digital platform, but we increasingly work on sort of social innovation and civic imagination projects that touch in the policy areas of health and well-being, climate justice, social justice, and much more. And whilst we're not explicitly an AI organisation, and it's a joy to be on stage with two people who are, AI is absolutely implicit in all we do now and in the future. And we've always used participatory digital tools to enable collective visions of the city's future. So behind me, you'll see as a project that we ran that I was just going to briefly talk through as a bit of a case study. And that was We Dundee, and it still is. It's very much a live project. We first brought We Dundee to the city, initiating it as a crowdsourcing community intelligence platform. And its purpose was to celebrate the city, increase a kind of sense of belonging by residents of our city, and help shape the city's future by gathering thousands and thousands of civic data sets or data points around current values and likes about the city, so what surprises you about the city, and what would you love to see happen in the future of the city. And we did a lot of kind of broad participation, so it wasn't just digital. We toured libraries, community centres, community festivals, etc., to gather this data. And the ideas, I think, were incredibly rich and featured a lot around culture and the environment, which sometimes we don't often see in survey data by local authorities, for example. And We Dundee in 2013, so the first column, really helped us get the title of UNESCO City of Design. We're the first and only city in the UK to be a UNESCO City of Design. We brought We Dundee back in 2016 as a chatbot. So it was an early AI experiment, and it was using the original We Dundee data sets that we gathered in 2013. But we plugged in some APIs with sort of weather, it had access to photos and some other small scale stuff. The challenge at that time was getting access to data sets, so it used the data set it had, and it had chats with you and could bring in the data from the first iteration. But it could also, it was kind of, it had quite a big personality. So it was almost acting like a junior tour guide. So if it didn't know the answer, it would kind of ask you back playfully. And I think, as Guy said before, the kind of magic that you can build in, I think we did that with the kind of character playful tone. And the aim was to build a bigger data set at a time when the data was limited, but it was a really low-cost, experimental, yet much loved by citizens project. And then we brought back We Dundee in 2020 as a recovery project. So it was a way of being a real-time civic sensor, I suppose, and you could go on and create your own little avatar, as you can probably see here in the last column. So you were not just consuming content at a time that we were stuck in our homes, but you were creating culture as well. And it really helped build a sense of cohesion, solidarity and hope. And we worked, because there were so many billboards around the city, we worked with the local authority to plaster these up all around the city. So you were surrounded by hope at that time. So I think for me, why We Dundee, whilst not explicitly an AI project, and we are thinking about what's the next iteration, I think it really allows people to help shape their city's story. It's been trusted and it's authentic, and what's next really for We Dundee is that I think how it could use AI is that it synthesizes, it clusters, visualizes patterns in real time. I'm really personally excited about the potential of AI for cities and places. So it can potentially generate compelling future visions, and I think the importance is that AI, it augments, not replaces, human community intelligence. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Gillian. I love the phrase civic imagination and the idea of community intelligence with AI. We'll get onto that. I think there's some interesting in that. And also, I think that's a perfect segue into... Jocelyn, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you in this, weird one-way way. My name is Jocelyn Burnham. So I am an independent AI communicator, workshop facilitator with the arts and culture sector specifically. I work with organisations like the Tate, Shakespeare's Globe, the Church of England. I do executive sessions with the Royal Household, and just sort of anywhere that someone is doing a project with AI, perhaps in a cultural setting, and they would like to develop some thoughts or some experimentation. My whole thing is I really do try to be neutral with AI in my practice. I always say if people despise AI and they want to, dedicate their life against it, I will support you every day of the week. Or if you want to build with it, innovate with it, try different types of things out, I will be there with you too. I really enjoy sort of just seeing where the creative practitioners themselves and the organizations want to go and then follow them wholeheartedly. And that's a big part of my philosophy with this work too, that the creative industries can't meaningfully affect or respond to AI until they feel they have a sense of agency. And that sense of agency can only really be achieved by knowing that your voice matters, your experiments matter, and actually you have a right to use your own language, your own reflections, and kind of your own humanity as well with AI, rather than sort of adopting the lexicon that might come out of Silicon Valley or something. So I do lots of different projects in this space, lots of different experiments as well. Often I'll do workshops or science festival shows and we'll do experiments on stage. One of the first things that I found really interesting when Midjourney first came out, this was the first really powerful text-to-image creator. There was a lot of discussion in both sort of the tech side and on the art side about what these tools might mean for the creative industries, whether they were creative, whether they were not, whether they were, pseudo capitalist repurposing of, cliche and all this. And I'm really curious how that gets translated, by the way. and I was really curious, if you can experiment with this on your own terms and how you find this out. And one of the early experiments I did about 24 hours after Midjourney came out was to create an image with it, put it on Etsy. I said in the description, this is AI generated, but I was really curious if it would actually affect the market, if people would actually pay money for this, because to me, those kind of experiments cut through the hype, they cut through all of this, and they give you actual data that you can see with your own eyes. Within a few weeks, I'd sold over 100 of those. I took it down, gave the money to charity, and after that, I became a real kind of proponent of the idea that you've got to do your own experiments because you can't really believe anything else. There is so much hype, there is so much overwhelm, there is so much emotion with AI that I think unless you're doing something with your own hands, trusting your own judgment and trusting your own expertise and values, you're probably going to get lost in the noise. So I really encourage that. And then there are a few other projects. I won't go into all of them. There's one that I'm doing right now with the Arts Marketing Association in the UK. So we have been working with 3 different cohorts, that's big groups from museums around the UK. And the idea was we wanted to use this sort of experimental, self-directed process to create an idea for an AI tool or some sort of AI-assisted system which could benefit the museum sector. After a year of doing this, we then pitched our idea, which is called Goose. And it's quite a simple idea. It's just a way for museums to share their data more effectively with each other. It runs on Claude, and then it sort of has a self-learning networking kind of function built in too. And it's just one example of sometimes things really are being built by the sector, and I love seeing those examples and seeing where they go. But yeah, I always enjoy just not knowing where things go and following the creative, and I think that's much more interesting, and I get a lot more kind of satisfaction from that.
Nice. Thank you very much. There's an interesting phrase, and it's Guy's fault that I know this, called wonder panic, and I don't know if anybody in the room has come across this before. It relates to an artwork, a digital artwork, which you can find on the Open Data Institute's website, but I feel like Guy used it, and it embodies the first hit of AI, that sense of wonder, and then the panic that it's going to take your job, ruin your life, completely change everything that you know. And I imagine lots of people in this building are seeing reports on their desk turn up talking about AI-led digital transformation and very high-level philosophical treatments of how AI is going to completely revolutionize productivity and change everything. And I'd like to ask the panel, actually, where would you start? What's a good starting point? Because at the moment, I think a lot of our interactions with AI are ChatGPT, chat windows, or maybe we're playing with the, with Suno or Midjourney or VO or some of those tools. But your level of exploration is much deeper. And so, for bearing in mind this audience, what would you say? Guy, do you want to start on that?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'll channel a friend of mine who runs I'll call it a very AI company, and I'm going to give an example, not a recommendation necessarily, because this is one end of the pendulum. He has asked all of his employees, and there are about 30 or 40 of them, to create 3 AI agents that can help them with their job. And what I found interesting about that was not the fact that he's mandating the technology in the space, but the fact that it creates a level of introspection about the bits in your job which you think could be done better, and ask that, and push it out of a comfort zone. So I think it was an interesting experiment to me. As you probably gathered from the introduction, my core passion and interest is around what can we do now that we couldn't do before. That is the interesting bit to me. It's not about doing the same thing and productivity and efficiency. But if we take, for example, cities and we do digital twins of them, then they shouldn't just be a walkthrough or a fly-through of this. They should be able to simulate what people think and how they work and turn them into a game, as I was showing. So I think those 2 things. One is individually, one can have a think about one's own life, but as Jocelyn was saying, also just create some images, see what it can do, because it'll surprise but delight as well, and maybe panic a bit.
Panic can also be creative, right?
Yeah.
Jocelyn, would you?
Yeah, sure. I think often when people first feel that they want to explore AI, to learn about it, the question that often gets used interchangeably with, how do I learn AI, is how do I become more efficient? Efficiency is kind of the byword, right? You hear this all the time. And I always go into a session and I'm like, efficiency it will come maybe, but also we're not robots. We do our jobs because we want to create value. We want to believe in what we're doing. We want to feel good at the end of the day. And so I think a good framing is to sort of think, actually, what makes my work feel like it has value to me? And then how do I move forwards with that? As far as how do you get kind of stuck in, I mean, there's also a temptation to think, what's the most important thing to learn about AI right now? And how do I learn that as quickly as possible? And it's a really understandable temptation, especially when there's so much overwhelm, when you just want to have some kind of a compass that you're like, okay, this is the important bit, this is what I'm going to learn. And the unfortunate thing is that can often sort of mask your vision a little bit, because everyone's going to be telling you something else is important. It will just make you feel really scattered. An approach which I find works really well, and I really encourage, is instead of following what you think is most important, just for a while, give yourself permission, like I said, to follow what's most interesting, what actually gives you a little bit of curiosity, what makes you want to stay up till 2 a.m, experimenting with some weird things. Because let's say you get really into AI music, and even if that feels a world away from the type of work you normally do, it won't be long before you're absorbing lots of terms and concepts around AI from that, which you can use across the board. You'll be learning about the training data, you'll be learning about the censorship, you'll be learning about closed source and open source. You'll be learning all these sorts of terms and kind of ideas because you followed something that you found interesting. And then that puts you in a great perspective to then look back and think, okay, with this knowledge I've acquired, which elements of this might be important to me at this time. So yeah, I really encourage you to follow your interests, because it is interesting. Whatever you think of AI, it's hard to call it boring, and then see where you go with that.
Thanks. Gillian, I was going to ask you a slight twist on that. We've talked about how to dabble. You have dabbled in a civic setting with AI.
Yeah.
I was going to ask what recommendations you had to use a city as a test bed for experimenting and using, employing.
I mean, for me, it's what do you want the future to look like? What do you want the city to look like in the future? And that's maybe your navigation point. I think I was already geared up for answering the last question, so I'll weave that in. No. But I think it is, as an advocate of soft infrastructure, so networks, the hidden, invisible mycelium, the things that keep the cities going, I would say find others that are interested in AI and harness their strengths and capacities and expertise. So, and every city and place has that interest. So I think that's a couple of different things. It's work out what your future is, and then work towards that with others, and just be really mindful of being inclusive of the more marginalised voices that are probably unheard at this point in time. So, yeah.
So thank you. The other thing that when we were chatting, we were talking about data. And there's a great phrase, if you've ever worked with databases, there's a great phrase, garbage in, garbage out. And obviously, now we've moved on to big data. We've moved from big data to large language models. And I think, Jocelyn, you alluded to training data. And I wondered what we can learn in approaches to training data and what it means in terms of the capabilities of AI and also biases and ensuring that voices are representative and the civic participation that's been mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. So the training data is just what the AI is built on. It's how it learns about the world. It's how it makes connections and between ideas. So pretty much all language models as a starting point will be trained on something called the Common Crawl. This is basically all of the publicly available internet. Anyone here can download it, by the way, if you have a big enough computer. And then it uses its sort of indigestion of that to make connections between the data, and then there's a post-training phase where lots of humans kind of rank their favorite answer and they generally tune it. So basically, the training data will give the AI its biases, it will give it its perception of the world, and then, that creates all the problems that you can imagine when you use the internet as the basis of your reality. It's also all the problems you can imagine when you use any other type of training data to create generative media. So with video, for example, it will be trained, of course, on probably all of YouTube if you're Gemini, or at least all the publicly available video it can get. But then we know that, for somebody to appear on video, for that person to be represented on film, there are a number of economic situations in our society, a number of biases already in who we choose to cast in films, what kind of films are popular, what kind of films aren't. And you can really tell this quite simply. I think a lot about sort of skin blemishes or sort of small imperfections that humans have and how beautiful they are, and how often that is just simply not reflected in some of this generative media, because people who might look that way might not have been the ones who were cast in the films, and then the films become the training data, and then the training data influences the output. So all the way along that, you have human bias, you have societal bias, and then you have the selection bias, finally, of the generated piece and how it's used for which audiences. So, kind of a rough way there, but at each step there is human bias, and at each step that causes a different type of representation, a lack of representation, or a false representation as well.
Thanks.
If I can build on that, my view is the bias is good in a lot of ways, and especially as a storyteller. If you have Star Wars and Darth Vader is not biased, you've got a really boring story. So we started, when we were starting to build the Charismatic project, we were working with Channel 4 and in the UK, and Aardman Animations, the wonderful animation company. And one of the first things we wanted to explore, this is back in 2018, so it was a bit of a fuzzy landscape, was bias, and specifically unconscious bias. And we researched and published a paper called Unconscious Bias in AI Datasets. And I suppose the outcome of that paper and the summary was, you can't eliminate it. It's always going to be there. The moment we wake up in the morning, we have bias in us. So the question is not, how to eliminate bias from these data sets. It's how to be aware of it and then leverage it and understand what you want to do with it. And whether that's a story or a building or something creative or something fundamental, it's key. What we have noticed is that there is a lot of commonality, like fairly beige, bland, across all data sets. So example was we were creating a murder mystery a bit like an Agatha Christie, and the detective coming out of OpenAI was called Monsieur Hugo, making it up, and then we did the same test in Anthropic, and the detective was called Monsieur Hugo. So clearly there is a sort of overlap between the two that we need to put some bias into to make it do what we want.
Yeah, there's a very interesting Wikipedia page which we were looking at, which shows you examples how you can detect AI writing. And one of the phrases that struck me was, it's always the regression to the mean, the average of the average. Mm-hmm. And yeah, to talk to Guy's point as well, everything is beige. So you've got to push things quite far or use different data sets to get away from an average. Sometimes an average is useful.
And by the way, that's a good thing. The beige is, because if it were really cool and really exciting and everything, then we've got a problem as humanity. But if we can recognise that it's actually a bit beige, then humanity has a good.
I was thinking at a city planning level, I'm assuming very useful to have population level statistics that will show you what's happening at population levels. And obviously there's a move within AI to use synthetic data, so AI created data sets that will show you what an average population will do, but by its own virtue excludes all the edge cases as well. I was actually going to ask you, Gillian, about how you promote inclusion in the work that you do if you're using AI, not just rely on massive data sets that are trained elsewhere.
Yeah. I suppose I can only speak to what my hope is for the future of that, I think, is that the algorithms and the platforms are designed by people who care about people on our planet rather than profit all the time. So that's what I'm keen to support. I think I'm really excited about the potential of digital twins, AI, and the capacity for cities to really help residents to really bring to life their ideas. I think that offers huge potential in terms of prototyping ideas virtually with AI as an enabler of that. And I think that for me is the next step. That's where I'm going. What I didn't say with the Dundee platform is that at every stage, those ideas have shaped city policy, and I should have probably said that. But so they've absolutely been fed into strategic policy with our local government and also to recovery plans at the time of COVID. So I think that, like a trusted platform, coupled with the ability to then rapidly test out ideas, whether it be in a digital twin sense or, I don't know, what's the future of this conference in future years' time? Will we all be presenting our ideas for the future, in AI form? It's very exciting.
So we've got about 20 minutes left, and I think we've got some people with microphones if there are any questions from the floor. Oh, that was very quick. We've got a question over there. If you're asking the question in Turkish, you might need to bear with us because we'll need the simultaneous translation as our Turkish skills are minimal, if not zero.
Okay, thank you so much. My name, I will ask in English, so thank you so much. My name is Arif. I am the university lecturer from Indonesia. Actually, I want to ask about the ChatGPT and also the same of the similar AI that boosts for the people, especially for finding the job. I want to ask is how you can see this trend, especially for evolving in this coming years, about the being used for the professional uses for the AI, and what the implications that you think that it will have the impact for the workforce and also the business in the regions, especially in the Europe or maybe in Asia. Thank you.
That's a big question. So if I'm summarizing, you're asking about the impact of AI on the workforce in general across different regions. That's quite a big.
Well, so thank you for your question.
Correct.
It is a big question. I think that what we're seeing at the moment is a lot of hype around what AI can do. And a lot of the problem comes in senior management in organizations that is pushed to go, well, with AI, we can achieve 20, 30, 40, 50%, I've heard, cost reduction, as Jocelyn was talking about before. Now, you can try that, but very quickly, fundamentally, people will see that the businesses will break because there's you can't just replace. It's not a one-for-one replacement. The other thing to look at is how much businesses around the world, whether you're a small shop or a multinational organization, are reliant on major technology companies like Microsoft. And Microsoft, because of the shareholder, the profit that Gillian was talking about, have to push forward AI because, as Sam said, the entire financial construct of the share of the stock exchange in the US is very dependent and very risk at the moment for AI. So the short answer to your question is I think we'll see a lot of push towards this sort of efficiency and people wanting to replace jobs with AI, but fairly quickly we'll see those jobs coming through. If you're an individual now and as someone with kids who are trying to work out what their education should be and what their jobs should be, it's a really unclear future in a lot of ways. And I think what I can say personally as a father is I teach resilience, and curiosity, like Jocelyn was saying. Stay curious. Stay resilient, because those are the things that employers are going to look for. But I think we are going to see this hype trend for the next year or so that will then revert back a little bit.
Is that curiosity through the medium of prompt engineering?
It's a mindset, but that's one of them.
Justin, would you?
Yeah, I could also hop in there. I mean, there's a lot of speculation about the future, like I said, and I always think if I or anyone could predict tech and macroeconomic trends, we'd all be Bitcoin millionaires, I think it's ultimately the future is a little bit unknown. I tend to align a little bit with Temis Hassabis. He had a great line about this, that AI is probably overhyped in the short term, underhyped in the long term. I think all we can do is look at individual innovation in individual sectors, see what they're doing, and then maybe creatively extrapolate and think, okay, if this sector is doing this, how could that apply to this one? I'm personally most interested in maybe medical care with AI. I can see that as an amazing area. I work a lot with artists and neurodiversity. I see that as a really interesting area where a lot of people who might not have been able to engage with certain types of work or certain types of learning, perhaps soon and now maybe can a little bit more. But where it goes on like a larger scale, I really don't know. I think it's much more interesting to look at the individual and then kind of creatively imagine where they could go with AI rather than where society as a whole could go, because then we're just kind of writing fiction, and I don't get much out of that myself.
Gillian?
And I absolutely agree with everything that's been said, so I would just say that, I'm relying on humanity, authentic human platforms. I think that's where we're seeing that people will absolutely need those touch points. And for me, it's all about empathy and curiosity and intuition that only we humans currently have.
Thanks. If I may indulge, I read a blog post yesterday that I thought that speaks to your point. There's a writer called Cory Doctorow, who is the guy who came up with the phrase enshittification, excuse my language, about how all products and services at scale tend to get more rubbish as time goes on, Google search, etc., etc. And there's talk of OpenAI introducing an ad-funded level as well. And he wrote yesterday, AI cannot do your job, but an AI salesman can 100% convince your boss to fire you and replace you with an AI that also can't do your job. And when the bubble bursts, the money-hemorrhaging foundation models will be shut off, and we'll lose the AI that can't do your job, and you will be long gone, retrained or retired or discouraged out of the labour market, and no one will know how to do your job. AI is the asbestos we are shoveling into the walls of our society, and our descendants will be digging it out. Quite a negative view, but an interesting perspective on how much hype there is behind AI at the moment, particularly if it's seen through the lens of massive productivity gains and reducing costs through reducing staff, which I think none of us particularly agree with or see. Do we have any other questions? Oh, we've got a question down the front here. Over here? Oh, sorry. It's a big room. Bear with us for a sec.
Okay, thank you everyone. I asked Turkish, but yeah.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Well, I am working on the digitalization reflections on urban cities, but I'll ask a more creative question. In architecture and art, sorry, I couldn't say, I got too nervous. After modernization, we ask the question whether is it functional or is it for aesthetics. In AI, we ask whether is it for design and creativity or to simply facilitate and simplify. That's the question we might ask. So what about the end of this discussion? Well, Jocelyn just touched upon that, but I'd like to ask you again. So how about this duality? Where should this discussion go?
That's a great question. So I'll summarize it as, is AI a creative tool or is it a productivity tool? Is that a fair summary, you guys? Is it more, what do we think in terms of the duality of the tool? Is it very functional or is it a creative tool? I mean, I think...
Yeah, I mean, I think often the two go hand in hand, don't they? One of the things that I'm finding most fascinating, for example, is when I'm seeing artists and creatives work with a domain they've never worked with before because of AI. So I was doing a workshop with the Royal Opera House recently. We got a whole bunch of opera makers, and we were like, let's make a computer game with AI about part of our practice. Let's see what that's like. Or let's build it with empathy and talk about an experience we've had that we want to share as a computer game. And what I love about this is its creativity and its function. It's having people who have not worked in a particular domain bring across their creativity, bring across the weird idiosyncrasies of their brain and apply it to that domain and see what happens. And we are really, at such an embryonic sort of micro beginning stage of this, where we're just getting people tiptoe and try out some of these domains that they otherwise haven't experienced. I think we're finding that with AI film too, that you're getting people who are getting really excited about being able to use parts of their creativity in a domain they previously hadn't had access to. So for me, it's both function and creativity. I think you can't have function without some form of creativity, probably.
I think your question referenced simplicity and then art and the challenge between both. And in architecture, that's always going to be, at cities and building design, that's always going to be a really interesting compromise between getting someone from point A to point B, simplicity, and the hidden bit, the invisible bit, which is, do they enjoy the journey from A to B? Again, there is no real direct answer to your question, but I do think that what I've seen in my own practice, my own work, that AI can do is give an alternative that I hadn't thought of. And so that point between taking someone from A to B in a building or A to B in a city, there's a lovely post by Rory Sutherland, who Sam and I read, who's an advertising guy, talking about railway journeys. And every train company wants to get from A to B faster, but actually we don't care that much whether a train gets into station B 10 minutes faster. What we care about is that we have a good experience. And his vote was get Disney to design railway networks, because then we would have fun on the journey as much as the time. I'm not sure that helps, but but the alternative viewpoint I like on AI.
Gillian?
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating question. I think for me, sometimes AI can be the quickest, but not the best solution. So it will give you the quickest analysis And I often worry about polarization of views, and I think that that's where we humans come in, because we have that care, and care demands attention, attention takes time. And I think that's why we advocate for those in the creative industries to play a key role in that care, because we do care.
That's cool. We had another question over there. Up a bit. That's right.
Hello, it's Mirza, and I'm quite excited. So if I hit the language barrier, I'm sorry. So my question is, in life, as we create, there's infinite possibilities in life, and we are choosing one, and then we create another possibility. But in AI, we are choosing a possibility, we are creating AI inside of it, then we are creating inside of AI. So what I'm trying to say is, can AI really create something new in this method? Or should we just use AI as a compiler, like a new coding language? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you've not used it, AI as a research tool is an incredible research tool. But you're talking about novelty, about creating completely new things with AI. I think, Guy, this is definitely in your wheelhouse.
So the first thing is, thank you for the question, is AI is really broad term. It's like saying mechanics or nature or something. Within the overall AI construct, there are elements like natural language processing, machine learning, all sorts of different pieces. So in some ways, the way that I look at this more and more is that these different elements that are created using AI are like a paintbrush as you're painting it. It's up to you which one you want to use to do whatever you want to do. If you want to make, as I said, a particular music soundtrack, cool, you can use AI, you can use an AI tool, music AI tool to do that. But even within that, the difference between one tool and another tool is really noticeable. So that's now up to me again to make the decision of which one I want to use. So I suppose to answer your question, I still think that the journey, the creative journey that the individual, you, go on as you are creating something, has got your own decision points as to how to navigate all of the different selections, technology selections that you make. We've been doing some short films over the last few weeks, and one is animated, one is live action. You saw a little bit of the live action one, which has changed even in the last week. But the tool set that we use between animated and live action is very different because they have different styles. And that choice is up to the creative director because he's had the initial vision. That makes sense. I mean, sort of, it's a big question.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned AI. It's not monolithic, is it? It's one thing, and we were chatting off stage about workflows and how you chain AIs together. And on the more technical side, there's a protocol called MCP, which lets AIs talk to other tools to get them to do stuff for AIs and create agents. And actually, you're knitting together a network of things, and how you knit that network together completely changes the output from it. And that's where the human bit, I think, is really crucial in developing things. And obviously, like I said, the tools change, daily at the moment, pretty much. So the capabilities change, and it's the selection of those. They're incredible tools, but you're starting, I think, we've gone from blank page to blank chatbot window. So we've got the same to overcome. Jocelyn, you work a lot in creative practice.
Yeah, really good question. And, the is AI creative question comes up a lot. I think it's really interesting to sort of think what's the rest of that sentence. Is AI creative, therefore artists will be out of work? Is AI creative, therefore it might do this? Is AI able to impress us with its creative output? I think so. I've listened to songs on Suno or Udio, AI songs, where it's been pretty good, and I haven't been able to personally, with my own untrained ear, been able to identify exactly what it was riffing off, how it was doing it. So I think there is a question here about why we care about whether AI is creative or not. Personally, I think often it comes down to, should we be worried as creative professionals about AI in that way? And I think the answer should be yes to that. It's very clear that whether or not you assign these things as creative or not, they can in some way affect the market of being a professional creative. Whether that's like the example I talked about before with just selling art on Etsy, or it's creating some background music for, a radio piece of music, or like an advertisement. A lot of this stuff is things which AI can reasonably do, whether or not we call it creative at all. And then you can get much further into the philosophy side of things, how do humans learn? Are we just processing data? Yada, yada, yada. But one of the really cool things I will touch on, not to be too technical, but I think because these systems can ingest such large volumes of data, they can do things which, because of their complexity, can appear incredibly creative. They can make connections increasingly between such diverse sources of data, where they might find one observation in one scientific paper published in 1951 that no one's ever read, and then perhaps connect that to a recent breakthrough in another domain. And that appears incredibly creative, but it's ingesting large sets of data. So it's a big question, it's a fascinating one, but also I think it's useful to look at the economics as well, because that kind of keeps us sane, depending on what answer we're looking for.
Great. Gillian?
Sorry if I'm interrupting, but can I add something? Something little?
Sure.
What I think is AI gained its popularity by being a chat box and an entertainment tool. Before that, we had AI on video games in like NPCs, non-playable characters. We had AI before that, but it was not popular until it became a entertainment engine, if I'm saying right. So what I think is AI just become a new thing as people's entertainment engine. So by us people, we can't create something new. That's why I said we can't create something new, because it just become an entertainment tool, and we are just creating things about entertainment. We are not using as a compiler. We are not, maybe you guys and some other people in other jobs using it as a tool of work and job, and they're using to create something new. But as I'm saying is, it's just like Google. It's just like a social media to us people, what I'm saying. So what do you think about this? Because I feel it's popular just because it's an entertainment tool.
So we use it for compiling, we use it for technical testing, we use it for much more than, I suppose, the front end, that one page that you see on ChatGPT. We connect API, we connect into these at quite a deep level. So, and the reason to do that often is to solve a particular problem that we've got, like testing. Testing is the good one, because so there are business sort of needs that we use, that we have, that we use it to as compiling. I do think we're in very early stages, and it's hard to see what the really strong use cases are going to be. But and like I said, it's only really been 2 years since ChatGPT came out, which was the front end. But as you're right, AI has been around for decades prior to that, and used in many different industrial ways. So I think part of the enormous societal change, this is not an industrial revolution. An industrial revolution only touches industry. This is an industrial and a societal revolution combined. What we see is the societal piece, the entertainment piece, because that's the most visible. But rest assured, underneath, there was an industrial revolution around manufacturing and mechanics and everything as well.
I'd also say, just for the individual, often entertainment sounds like a passive activity, but if you're playing and engaging with these systems, using your imagination, creating scenarios, that's an active process. That's a muscle that you're stretching, it's something you're doing. I think that kind of self-provocation to keep you interested, that is creation. That is something where you are learning a skill, perhaps, or researching a subject. So I wouldn't write off the idea that entertainment is sort of something that doesn't feed into all other areas of innovation and development too. I think it really does. That's all I'd say to that.
Gillian?
Yeah, and I think our last speaker spoke very well about AI and the impacts on agriculture, food, the state of the planet. So I do think that there is a very educational purpose to AI. I think for me, with communities, from a community perspective, people are really stuck at the moment. People are facing really hard times. It's really hard when you're in survival mode to be thinking about the future in an optimistic, compelling way. And I think AI can offer those tools to help people to construct next steps. People that are not in this room, people that don't see themselves as creative. And I think that AI can offer those tools. And I'm very excited, as you probably can tell, about the kind of ability of AI to create compelling future visions with humans.
Thank you. We are probably slightly out of time, but I was going to ask for one little nugget that people could go and look up afterwards, to go and look at one AI tool or project or bit of research.
Go very quick. I'm just going to say connect with your local AI experts.
Cool.
Similar to that, I would say connect with your colleagues. Don't do this in silo. All of you are going to be each other's best sources of advice and inspiration for what kind of AI tools to experiment with. Use that. Don't only look at reports that are coming out of different sectors, different industries. Talk to your colleagues, maybe have a working group, a discussion group, an informal robots and coffee group, whatever works for you. I think that's where the best ideas come from.
Okay.
And I'd go practically Google Notebook LM, upload a report into that and generate a podcast of that report. Or a book you're studying, or something you've got to read, because it's fun and it's a good first step.
So I'll add one to that along those lines. You can use any LLM for it, is get it to be a critical friend by pretending to be a great philosopher or a great engineer or somebody who's created a huge body of work that it can feed on, and then ask it to critique the work that you're doing. So I've heard of a TV company who've created virtual commissioners, and then they pitch their idea to the virtual commissioners to get feedback based on what they've done in the past, which I think is a very clever use of the technology rather than churning out terrible, bland emails. We're out of time. Thank you very much. All of us will be around. I'd like to thank MARUF. Thank you for the British Council as well. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Thanks, Connor. Cool.